if they're also using the numerics to be able to identify. But we are quite concerned because it is selective. In most polling stations, things are moving on, the queues are moving on. But in those ones that have huge numbers, it seems to be, not, I won't, conclusively say so, but why is it that the delays are in those polling centers and polling stations that, have huge numbers of voters? We've had experiences in the past, especially in by-elections like in Mbote, where those kind of polling stations had delays right from morning, which eventually ends up, taking it to the dark when it comes to the closing and turning the polling station to a tallying center. So people are ready to be able to vote, and you cannot be able to lock people out. So by 5 o'clock, you still have people in the queue, which means your tallying is going to be dragged down into the dark. And you know what happened in Mbote, where goons raided, polling stations, and they ended up burning papers and doing whatever they wanted to do. So we are still observing and looking at, the occurrences and taking note quite closely.
Do you feel like the electorate is being discouraged by some of these delays? There are instances where voters would potentially be casting their ballots, are going back home without doing so?
Absolutely. There's a lot of tension around here, Fred, that I can tell you it started last night. We had parts of Ol Kalou where people, villagers were being harassed by police at night yesterday. But there were some occurrences during the day where the government had tried to take some donations or whatever we may call it. But, in the correct terms, is some bribes. You've taken rice, you're taking beans, you're taking giveaways, at the eve of an election. That translates directly into voter bribery. So some of the members, within Ol Kalou, the voters, refused to take it. And they ended up colliding with the chiefs and the people who had come to deliver them. So they ended up having some operations at night where people are being beaten up by homes because chiefs knows you by name. And they know the kind of commotion that was there during the day. So there is a very high tension because there are also very many vehicles, unmarked vehicles without number plates. Police presence here is something that we've never seen before. One road between, a place called Guakiongo all the way to Ol Kalou has more than 14 roadblocks. So you wonder, what are these roadblocks for? So there is a lot of tension. Okay. And I agree that this delay is definitely raising the adrenaline of these people in regards to they would want to vote early and go back home and probably run away. There are, information and that there are a lot of, foreigners and goons that have been ferried into these places, some of whom have been identified. So people would really want to get out of that polling stations as fast as possible. So this delay would eventually, in a way, suppress voting because someone might be impatient or develop impatient and leave the polling station.
Yes.
Which we as a party believe is the intention. I've had Sosion, because I've been listening to you, I've had Wilson Sosion there say that the owner of the goons is none other than our party leader. You cannot rely on a Monday, on a Thursday morning, on a national television. Well, how many goons does he have? We've been seeing people who are supporters of government moving around with goons. We've been seeing goons armed with rungus and everything moving around in company of police here. They are with police. How can somebody associated and affiliated with Rigathi Gachagua even go anywhere near the police?
Okay,
the police are state-owned. So
okay.
It is impossible. And you cannot even purport to tell us here that we have goons. We can't even have goons. We have the people of Ol Kalou. Our hope, is the people of Ol Kalou are going to be able to defend, their rights.
Bwana Ikua, your party leader talked about probably plans to cause voter suppression in Ol Kalou. With the turnout you've seen so far, would you say that is true, that there's a low voter turnout?
There has been a lot of effort, to try and do voter suppression. Every time you try and create, this big fear of, police presence, when you try and create this, that like there is a crisis coming, visual, this is visual, intimidation, where police, presence is everywhere. I can say from what I'm seeing right now is that people have high determination to be able to participate in this particular by-election. As much as we may not attain the highest ever, or we've been able to attain before, I believe that there will be not, from my estimate, not anything between 60 and 75% voter turnout will be achieved, according to the numbers that we are seeing currently within the various polling stations. I've been able to visit a couple of them, and I can tell you hundreds of voters have already come out.
All right. Any estimation of 60 to 75% voter turnout in a by-election is very impressive. Asante sana Bwana Ikua, will be coming back to you for more updates later on.
Fred, this is because, in Nyandarua before, we've had even as high as 85 to 90% voter turnout. Nyandarua people, in terms of coming out to vote, this is a different breed of people. And I think you need to check that from your statistics. You will find that in central Kenya, we've always been the highest voter turnout county. Oh. So in Ol Kalou, we can see that clearly by the numbers we are seeing right now, despite the efforts to suppress. But we hope that people will continue coming out to vote and vote for their candidates.
All right. Asante sana Bwana Ikua Mbote, DCP official who's currently observing the process of voting in Ol Kalou. Bwana Abdi Nur, there were even